Hi, hi. My name is Peter, and I will be talking about rabies today. Rabies is 100% a fatal disease if not treated that results in fatal encephalitis, resulting in death. So, what are the signs and symptoms of rabies? When rabies is in its incubation period and in the peripheral nerves, most symptoms look like a simple infection. Preliminary symptoms include a fever, tiredness, headache, all symptoms that don't look like rabies at first. When rabies progresses to the CNS, to the central nervous system, the symptoms look a lot more like the rabies we all know. The affected person can become highly excitable, experiencing alternating periods of aggression and calmness. Their mouth and throat also have involuntary painful spasms when they try to swallow water, which is why hydrophobia, the fear of water, tends to develop. They can also experience involuntary painful spasms when they feel air drafts, also developing aerophobia, the fear of air drafts. They can snap at anything within reach, even biting others. Swallowing becomes difficult, and saliva increases a lot as the paralysis begins to set in. Finally, the victim progressively loses nerve control, which leads to death within just a few days of the symptoms appearing. The causative agent of rabies is the rabies virus, and it is a virus, obviously. They are a member of the Rhabdoviridae family, Lyssavirus genus, and the rabies lyssavirus species. The rabies virus is a bullet-shaped, single-stranded, negative sense, unsegmented, and enveloped RNA virus. Their typical size is around 60 to 60 nanometers by 180 nanometers. The victim usually first gets bitten by an animal affected by rabies, especially dogs. The saliva from that bite will seep into the victim and infect them with rabies. Now, the immune system does not immediately respond because there is often too few rabies viruses to trigger an immune response. So then, rabies undergoes its incubation period. It first replicates in the muscle tissue near the bite. Then, rabies eventually enters motor neurons where it travels along peripheral nerves and then to the CNS at a rate of 15 to 100 millimeters a day. When rabies has affected enough of the CNS for the victim to start showing symptoms, the incubation period ends. Then the virus infects the brain, causing fatal encephalitis, causing death. So here we have a short graphic from the textbook explaining the basic pathway of rabies. It first comes from a rabid animal and transfers to the human via a bite. Then the virus replicates itself in the PNS, where it moves from the PNS to the CNS. At this point, the victim will start showing symptoms of hydrophobia, aggression, etc. Then they will finally pass away from the fatal encephalitis caused by rabies. Virulence factors are considered structures and strategies that viruses use to spread disease. The virulence factor that helps spread rabies is the G protein. Once the rabies viruses enter the body through an infected bite, it attaches to the whole cell membrane of muscle cells using the G protein. Then it enters the cytoplasm through fusion or pinocytosis. It uncoats to RNP and replicates, creating even more viruses with G proteins to help them attach to other host cells to replicate even further. As you can see from the image, the G protein exists on the envelope and it uses that to attach to other host cell membranes. Rabies are most commonly transferred from a rabid animal to a human via an infected bite. In the US, bites from bats are the most common way to get rabies. This is due to domestic animals having a high rate of vaccinations. In other regions like Africa, Latin America, and Asia, it is expensive to get these vaccinations for domestic animals, so dog bites and scratches make up 99% of rabies cases. Other animals that can also transfer rabies are raccoons, skunks, foxes, and coyotes. About 70,000 deaths occur annually from rabies, almost all of them coming from Africa, Latin America, and Asia, and almost all of them are from dogs. 40% of these deaths are children under the age of 15 years old. In the US, about 7,000 to 8,000 animals are diagnosed with rabies each year, but fewer than 10 people actually die. People who are most susceptible to rabies are travelers, outdoorsy people, people with careers related to animals, like agriculture workers and veterinarians. From this graph, we can see in the US, due to the high vaccination rate, the rabies cases for humans have dropped below 10. Most of the time, testing is not done after a bite. After a person gets bitten by an animal and their rabies status is unknown, they receive PEP. PEP is post exposure prophylaxis, which is a set of recommendations to do after a bite. And thankfully, the rabies incubation period is long enough to allow immunity to develop from PEP. The first step is wound care, which means washing with water. The next step is a human rabies immune globulin HRIG vaccine. This vaccine provides immediate antibodies before the rabies vaccination. Then the first dose of the rabies vaccine is given at the same time as that HRIG vaccine. And then additionally, a dose of the rabies vaccine is given on days 3, 7, and 14 after the first dose. About 40,000 people a year receive PEP for a potential rabid bite. Once symptoms appear, there is really nothing that can be done. Rabies is 100% lethal after symptoms showing, and the only primary treatment is to medically induce a coma to reduce those symptoms, such as excitability, while administering antiviral drugs during that coma. Even then, after they wake up, the rest is up to luck. After death, rabies can be tested using the direct fluorescent antibody test or the DFA test. It requires taking a sample of the victim's tissue and trying to detect the viral antigen for rabies. Other tests can be done using samples of saliva, blood, or even cerebrospinal fluid. While these do test for rabies, these tests are often not done before treatment. Rather, PEP is given immediately post bite. The graphic here is what you see during a DFA test. To prevent rabies, PEP should be done immediately. Also, just avoid wild animals in general and vaccinate any pets you have. Otherwise, countries in Europe and America are trying to immunize wild animals. They are doing this by injecting the vaccine to wild animals with the same G protein as rabies. This is to force the animals to make rabies antibodies so that when they encounter rabies, they can't get infected and spread it. And these are my references. So if you want to remember one thing from this, if you ever get bitten by an animal, get PEP. Anyways, bye bye.